Hi, this is Shashi Saluna from the Tantra Made Easy podcast, and I'm exploring this wonderful topic: how can sex lead us to a spiritual experience? And today I'm very, very excited to be chatting with a friend of mine who is one of the most interesting people from the path that he's walked. His name is Ohad Ezrahi. I'm not sure about the pronunciation. Is that right?
Ezrahi.
Ezrahi, thank you. And he's an author and a facilitator. He's actually ordained as a Kabbalist rabbi, and he's also a Dharma holder in the Zen Peacemakers order. So he's coming from a very rich spiritual background, and he's an author of 6 books. So I have several more to read, but including this wonderful book called Kadesha, which is about, it's a fictional book, but it's such a powerful, powerful book about the different choices that we make in spirituality and sexuality. We'll talk more about that. Final part of the introduction is that he's part of the lead faculty of ISTA, the International School of Temple Arts, which I know many of you have heard of or have joined. So that's the introduction. Welcome, Ohad.
Hi. Hi, Shashi. Good to see you across the ocean.
Yeah. So, when I was thinking about chatting with you, I thought, wow, there's so much of your story that I think is amazing to share with people, because you've so much walked that journey of trying to explore spirituality and then how to bring sexuality in alignment with that. So do you want to share a little bit about your history, your story?
Sure. Well, it started with a lot of pain, I have to say, around this conflict, because from early age, I was interested in eros. Before I was sexual, I was like, as a little boy, I was like really little. I have memories of being 2, probably 2.5, maybe 3 years old, still crawling in the crib and with my friends, and being really interested in their body and genitals, and then growing up like that, being interested, and also have memories from this age, something like, what the fuck, like what's happening in this world? What is this? What is it? I grew up in a very conventional, good family. Just my parents are, mainstream, nothing spiritual, nothing unique about the family. And I felt like, what is this planet? Like, where am I? Where am I? It's like really like as if I landed in a place I couldn't believe what I see. And then I grew up like that, with these 2 desires: one, to know the secret of this world and just not believing that this is it. Like, grow up, go to university, have a job, marry. This kind of, it just couldn't be. But there weren't any answers back then. I mean, I grew up in Israel. I could only read Hebrew. No spiritual books were there in Hebrew back then, only religious books. And I was totally interested in girls, and the mystery that they have. I mean, this was a mystery as well. When you're seeking for mysteries, there's just the mystery of the universe and the mystery of girls. So it was a conflict, and when I became a teenager, I was already immersed in meditation and shamanism, and from the little that I found, finally I found my own ancestors' religion, Judaism, and the Kabbalistic path, the Hasidic Kabbalistic path in it, and I decided to go this way. And part of the reason I decided to go this way, like really, really serious, was because I felt that those 2, the urge to spirituality, or the way I called it back then, the desire to God, to connect with God, and the desires of the body to eat and fornicate um, were contradictional.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
How did you deal with that? I mean, you chose to become a rabbi, so you really went deep into the spirituality.
I didn't choose to become a rabbi. To becoming a rabbi is being ordained, and I was ordained many years later, actually.
Uh-huh.
I chose to immerse myself in the practice and in the study.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't care less about titles. I mean, people wanted to make me a rabbi, and I said, like, you know, my mom wants me to learn in university and get a title and get a degree. You're telling me to have a degree, a rabbinical degree. I'm not interested in that. I was really, really, honestly interested in learning and connecting with the divine. So I was immersed in prayer, and you know, it was great getting up at 3:30 a.m., going to what we call mikveh, which is bathing yourself in fresh water early morning, and then going in solitude and studying Kabbalah before dawn, and
Wow.
uh, and you know, under my prayer shawl and praying, crying, and really, really putting my heart on the altar
Mm.
day after day, night after night, and studying most likely net 14 hours, I think, a day.
Wow. So in this
Um,
time, I'm guessing you were celibate, or you didn't have much time for
I was
relationship.
I was celibate for half a year. My girlfriend back then came to religion just after me, and we got married when I was 18 and a half. I mean, I joined religion when I was 18. We were 18, and half a year after, we were married by one of the most important figures in the Kabbalistic Jewish Orthodox world, by the Admor, the Rabbi of Belz. You wouldn't know it unless you're in the really Orthodox Jewish world. He arranged our marriage. He took me under his wings. I was like his kind of adopted son, so to say. It was very close to him, which is very rare. You know,
Mm.
it was considered a rare honor. It was really an honor. Um,
So how did your struggle show up, you know, with what you were learning and reading and surrounded by, and your own physical yearnings, and where was the struggle coming up?
well, the struggle was, so I was married,
Mm-hmm.
um, but Orthodox marriage is, and especially under Hasidic and Kabbalistic instructions, sex is not to be enjoyed of. Like, yeah,
Mm.
it's,
No.
yeah.
How do they stop you from enjoying it?
Well, you just need to poison the mind to say that if you have pleasure, this is, you're taking yourself down. Like, you need to take yourself up to the divine. You need to have sex. It's a paradox. You have to have sex once a week on Shabbat. On Friday night, you have to have sex. It's a mitzvah. It's part of the Jewish law to have sex.
Wow.
When the woman is not in her bleeding time, which in Judaism takes half of the month, like 12 days, basically. I wouldn't go to all the details, but
Yeah, yeah.
it takes kind of between 10 and 12 days, usually 12 days, that she can't have sex. So, you know, once a week in the other 2 weeks, which means twice a month. um, and, you know, I was in my 19th and 20th, and I was, you know, when the early 20s, when your blood is, the animal
Mm.
wants to have sex, but my heart was like yearning for the divine, and what I learned is that if you feel the pleasure, you're taking yourself down
Mm.
to the carnal world, and the desire was to actually separate from the body. I mean, so different from what we're doing today, but to
Yeah.
actually separate from the body and be completely in consciousness. Um, and while having sex. So actually, even the little pleasure that the body feels, because the body has to feel pleasure, otherwise it would function, you give it up to the divine on the altar. And for men, any spilling of semen out of the womb of a woman is the most worst sin ever.
Oh, wow.
Even if it's happening at night when you're, dreaming. So wet dreams are a big sin.
But it's biological.
It's biological, of course, but there's a fight, there's a struggle against biology, against the body. When you're actually in a battle against the body, you're actually trying to fight it. And of course, it's no one can actually win it. And if you actually win it, you win over your body, and the body is not happy, and it comes up in other ways. The body is not happy. The body revenges in other ways, as illnesses and stuff like that.
So when did it start to change? If you're completely indoctrinated in this world and this belief structure, how on earth did you get out of it? Like what burst your bubble?
The funny thing is that in the core of the mysticism of Judaism, it's all about sexuality.
Huh.
Yeah, and because I was studying Kabbalah, and I was considered very, in high levels in that, and was accepted to the closed places. I was in my 20s. I was studying with people in their 60s and 70s in the very orthodox, like the old time study place in Jerusalem. So I had the approach to a lot of the core texts that usually people don't learn. And then you start to see that at the core of everything is actually the sacred union, the Heros Gamus, between all kind of, there are different levels, very much like Tibetan Buddhism, different levels of spirit that are symbolized as divine characters, and it's all about them unifying, making love.
So actually through these texts, you started to realize that sex might actually be not something to overcome, but actually a doorway.
Yeah, and then I found a text from one of the main Kabbalists in actually not so long ago, in the 19th century, the beginning of the 19th century, and he confessed the same. He said, at the beginning of my study, I thought that having sexual pleasure is a sin, and I was trying to really avoid it. And then later, God gave me this realization, and it's a real gift. And I understood that pleasure is sacred, and the meaning of sacred sexuality is not avoiding pleasure, but actually going deep into the secrets of pleasure.
Wow.
And he said, and this is a great secret that, kind of when in Kabbalah, when they say a secret, they don't mean that it's not to be spoken about, but that it cannot be revealed, because, secrets are things that even when you speak about, a person cannot understand unless they
experienced it. Yeah. So you began to get access to these secrets. Luckily in your 20s, because I guess the rest of the guys were in their 60s, and by then, they've gone so long with another way. And so then what happened? Like, did you and your wife want to start exploring, or did you go out?
We started very, very slow, because I was so, I was in the Vatican of Judaism. I was like in Jerusalem, in the world of Kabbalah, and I started to ask questions that I wasn't supposed to ask.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, people are very kind with me, my teachers, but slowly they started to kind of spiritually threaten me, that, I'm leading myself to hell, that I'm kind of guiding, I'm leaving the pathway, and it's gonna take its revenge for me, even if in the beginning I feel it's all good and ta-da-da. So we moved very, very slowly. And at the beginning, we moved within the Orthodox world from one group to another, a little more open. And I really went deep into Kabbalah, like really to understand deeper and deeper, and that took me also to academy, to study Kabbalah in academy, because I wanted to understand, to learn things that in the Orthodox places they wouldn't teach you, because there are, texts that are considered the heretics of Kabbalah. But in academy they have those texts.
Yeah.
And then, of course, once you're exposed to those texts, there were Kabbalists all over the place and all over the time that were, crazy mystics, and some of them had crazy experiences that are also sexual, like, sexual ceremonies, sexual orgies, as a sacred ceremonies, homosexuality. I'm not gay. I'm totally not gay, but I totally appreciate it and, for it. But some of them were gay. Many times I think gay people are actually so open-minded because they're wired in a different way. So some gay Kabbalists actually, of course, the name wasn't there, but they had also same-sex relationship and explored that, and things that in the religious world were no.
So you started to find the fringes of the spiritual world, or the religious world, in fact, that were pushing those boundaries and those edges.
Yeah.
And that began to open the doors for you.
Yeah, and as well, I came back to all kind of, other spiritual paths. So I re-enrolled into my Buddhist interest and my shamanic interest. I was in touch with Native American shamanism and walk this way. I'm actually honored to hold a chanupa of Lakota that I was given as a recognition, ordained to run sweat lodges and stuff like that. And back to my interest in Zen Buddhism, and was kind of recognized as Dharma holder in the Zen. So I started and Sufism, which I'm not ordained in any way, but I was working with Sufis for peace work, just started to expand open the envelope of religion, to inter-religious conversations and dialogues and experiences. And then I opened my ashram. I left in 2000, I left the religious world with a kick in my ass. Like, after they couldn't bear me anymore, they actually, things that I said, were too much. I was asked either to deny what I said, to deny my truth, or to leave.
Wow, that's a big moment, huh?
It was a big moment.
When you've given your whole life and given so much time to a system, when they finally say, you either conform to us or you leave, it's like huge. To follow your truth in that is a really big thing. I
had 3 little children, and I could have a good future there, being a teacher. I was a teacher, and that's how I made my living. I was a teacher. I was offered, even I was seduced to and to know that they're planning big plans on me as a teacher. But I couldn't, I'm a truth seeker, so
Yeah.
my truth is like death is better.
Yeah.
Um, so I left everything and I said, God will take care of me. I basically chose God and not religion.
Oh, that's a nice line. I love it. And so with that in mind, you went off and created your own
Yeah,
ashram.
yeah. I called it yeshiva ashram. Yeshiva is the Jewish study place, so I call it yeshiva ashram. And I found a place by the Dead Sea. It's actually the place where the Easter festival is happening now. Same place
Oh,
exactly. Um,
wow.
yeah, and my wife and I just moved there and said, like, whoever is interested, come. And people started to come, and we started to have activities, and it was like a lab, basically, of
Yeah.
let's throw any dogma, and let's try everything.
And that included sexual explorations?
It At the beginning, it didn't have much sexual explorations, just openness.
Yeah.
Later, we started to explore open relationships and polyamory. The word polyamory didn't exist, not in Israel at least. But one of my big desires was actually to feel love beyond the confinement of the two.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in a very close community, and we loved each other. So how do we celebrate that? So once I was pushing to go this way, to open relationships, and I have to say many of my um, supporters didn't like it. Some of my students really loved it and went with it. Several of my supporters, the financial supporters of the ashram, didn't like it.
Uh-huh.
And I was confronted again with the same thing.
Wow. So it was quite public. It's not like you could it's your own interest. It's like you're a spiritual leader in some way, or at least
Yeah,
a leader.
I'm
So
a spiritual leader. Whatever I do is
you see,
public.
yeah, the
Yeah.
weight up.
And yeah, and also if my students are making poor mistakes in the path of how to open the relationships, which they did,
Yeah.
kind of against my advice. People put it on my account.
Yeah. Right.
Which is fair enough. That's okay. But so at that time, my wife back then realized that that's actually not her path. Like polyamory is not her path. She totally, it was beautiful. We were together since we were teenagers in high school.
Wow.
But she realized, she said, like, I really appreciate this is your path, and I tried it. It's not for me. We love each other. Let's separate. Let's go different ways, because you need to explore what you need to explore, and I don't. I
Yeah.
need a different thing, and so we separated. And I really remember this German lady that was in our divorce ceremony. We did a divorce ceremony in the community. And this divorce ceremony was more full of love than many of the weddings that I've been to.
Wow, amazing. And so how about sexuality? Like after all of that learning that pleasure was against godliness, what began to change in your exploration? Did you try particular techniques, or just by opening yourself, did new experiences come?
Yeah, of course, both. I'm a curious guy, so I studied whatever I could. Back then, started to open the world and also literature to tantric experiences, Taoist methods, breathing, mula bandha, moving energy, kundalini. I was exposed to a lot of that and practiced a lot of that. Nevertheless, I'm not into excess practice in these ways. Like my main experiences didn't come from doing this or that specific practice, breathing this specific way. My main connection to spiritual sexuality came from putting my heart on the altar in the midst of lovemaking and really melting into love that is going beyond the personal, and loving God, Goddess, the divine through the person I'm making love with, or the persons, if it's a group sexual experience. It's going beyond the body into the soul, and even beyond the soul to divine love. It's actually loving love itself through the act of lovemaking.
And is that mostly an intention, just like intending to love beyond the personal, and intending to see the person's soul? Or
it's an intention, but it's not. When we say intention, it's more of can be like a thought, but this is more of a heart direction, where the heart is what's attracting me, because what attracted me always since my babyhood was the mystery of love, the mystery of the divine. So it's basically orienting my inner direction towards what's anyway is attracting me, which I just realized. Yeah, we started to speak about the way that at the beginning I thought those two, the girls and God, this G and that G are going in different. And what I realized at a certain point is that there is only one G. The 3G of God, girls, genitals. It's a G. It's one. And so I started to realize that actually through my experiences with women and with the pleasure of genitals, I am connecting to God. God is divine realms. And this is what for me is sacred sexuality. For me, sacred sexuality is very simple. It's when I have a sexual experience that functions like a doorway, like a gate to connect with divine realms, altering consciousness. And I had many of those. What happened actually is at that time I started to download, like while making love, and especially with my beloved today, Dawn, who's my wife now. When we started to make love this way, I started to get downloads of, teachings and meditations and practices and all kind of things. Today, I'm teaching those things in ISTA, in my own workshops. Mainly, it was like just downloads that came from personal experience and not something that I read in books and now I'm, preaching it back. But I read those books, but what's sitting in my heart is what I got from personal experience.
What would you say to someone who's listening who has very three-dimensional sex? It just feels this kind of like routine, and they have sex and they want a taste of divine lovemaking. Is there some way you could guide them, like what to do to get there?
Well, I would first ask if is it they feel any kind of divine feelings? Is it in nature, or is it in meditation? Is it when you go to church or synagogue or temple, whatever it is? What is it when you speak about connecting to the divine? Where do you have a taste of that? And track that, actually. Track where you have the opening, track that, and how can you bring love and lovemaking into that? So if it's in nature, for instance, so walk with your beloved in nature. It doesn't need to have sex in nature first, because it will take you away from the feeling in the beginning. But bring your beloved to nature and try to feel together this experience. Invite them to the experience of opening to the divine, to what you feel. Sit in meditation, hug, cuddle, breathe, open. Many things happen when you embrace, and instead of bringing your focus down to this specific nipple or clitoris or whatever it is, you open up your consciousness. So you are aware of, here is my beloved, and you open up your consciousness to, hey, we are here on these rocks, under these trees, there are birds here, there are ants, there are the sky. So really opening consciousness while you're together.
So you learn to fuse the expansive experience with that sort of focus we have of connection, and actually not compromise one or the other, but bring them together.
Yeah. And if it's nature, if it's in nature, if it's in church, do the same in church. Find a private. Don and I, we made all kind of weird, so to say, bizarre sexual experiences with the Jewish sacred places and items and stuff like that, because stuff that was moving for us. So connect instead of separating those two, actually bringing them together.
Right.
And, yeah.
So then, therefore, things like, in fact, I remember, if I can share, being with you and Dawn on a Friday night, and how we were in a very intimate space with a group of people, and that you were singing lots of spiritual songs, and some people were singing and holding ritual, and some people were making love, making out, being a connection. And it was so beautiful to fuse, rather than like now we get all dressed up and sit and sing spiritual songs and then we go to a secret place and make love. Just having a space that welcomed all of it. I find that really beautiful, to not have separation. So things like that as well, right? Where
absolutely,
if you have a connection to God through listening to spiritual music, you could actually put that on while having an intimate experience, and just get over the glass ceiling that has separated those two for so long.
Yeah, and it's in many culture, the separation between spiritual experiences and sexual experiences. Yeah. It's the dichotomy is so strong. And it started long ago when monotheistic religions came to the surface, and they created that, because in ancient religions, pagan religions, what we do today is sexual shamanism was part of the path. And that's my book, Desha, is all about that time, actually, as a historical novel. This is in the Near East, but I also lately we were so fortunate to encounter some Peruvian shamans, a man and a woman that were educated not by the Christianized. Most of the even natives are Christianized,
right?
But they were educated far in the mountains, in a place that there are little villages far that the Spanish people didn't bother.
Yeah.
Conquering. So they don't speak Spanish there, and they were never Christianized. They were never. So the doctoring of separation between sexuality and shamanism never got there.
How interesting. So why do you think that separation was created? I mean, as someone who studied religion so deeply, why did so many religions create this teaching? Do you think they genuinely believe it and they're trying to protect people, or is it a way to control people, or do you have your theory on that?
Yeah, they're both. They genuinely believe it. So there is a try to help people ascend,
Mm-hmm.
and there is also a political level that it's easier to control people that their sexuality is controlled. But it's the same thing, because many religions, especially when they're patriarchal religions, are trying to ascend. The masculine is trying to ascend, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So even religions that actually embraced sexuality, like you can find it actually a lot in Tantra, in different aspects of Tantra, that embracing sexuality, but actually not embracing it because you need to sublimate it.
Yeah, yeah.
Which means actually there's something wrong in the animal body, that it becomes okay or sacred only if you sublimate it and you bring the energy up the chakras. It's a subtle way of saying there's something wrong with the...
Yeah. Oh, I've come across this, and it's like,
Yeah.
you know, I've joined one tantric yoga school where you had to sublimate every bit of pleasure before you'd even experienced it. And I started to feel like I love to sublimate, but I'm going to experience it fully first and just sublimate it when I want to have that divine experience. But I'm going to have the human experience first. And it's but it can be put in the teachings that these are lower chakras and lower feelings, and you got to move it up as fast as possible. And again, I totally picked up on that message that you share. That whereas when you read some of these Tibetan tantric scriptures, you hear about these wild women in the jungles. You know, they have such a different interpretation of what Tantra was about. Excuse me.
Yeah,
so, you know, definitely. And I think in some ways, maybe it's just each teacher, if they haven't resolved their own religious conditioning, they can sneakily kind of bring it in, even if they're teaching Tantra or learning Tantra, and kind of Christianizes even those teachings. I read once that the texts from Tantra were originally translated into English by Victorian British men. And so they put their own slant on it all and sort of presented it a certain way. And then this female academic, she retranslated everything. And she found that the teachings were, you know, completely different from the way they had translated it. So it's very difficult to find like a pure teaching other than through our own bodies, I think.
Exactly. And our own bodies are sacred text. And the thing is that sublimation is not the only way, and it's not needed even when you sanctify the lower chakras. And that's what we say in Ista is not an ascending path. Ista is a descending path as much as an ascending path. Mm-hmm. So the masculine is, as I said before, is trying to ascend all the time, because the material world is more feminine by nature. Like nature itself is feminine, and the masculine is trying to escape. And when it's unhealthy, is basically trying to escape nature and control it. Science that is trying to understand nature and put it in laws and in boxes is kind of giving up today in the trying to make nature logic, because nature is not logic. Nature, you know, quantum physics, it's paradoxical.
Yeah.
The fundamental of nature is feminine in that way. It doesn't go into this logic. So the aspiration to ascend is genuine in the heart of the masculine when it's undeveloped enough to meet the feminine in her power. So then they want to ascend. So meditation that is ascending, or sublimating the animal body, saying that it will be sacred if we, you know, bring the energy up. That's one way. Mm-hmm. But being mature enough spiritually to actually go down and meet with take consciousness and take spiritual awareness and bring it down to emotions. First of all, that's another thing. Many schools are kind of bypassing emotions, trying to control emotions, but no, meeting your emotions and your dark emotions, and then meeting your sexuality in the second chakra. Meeting the sexuality with consciousness, not trying to control it and not trying to sublimate it, but actually penetrate it with consciousness itself. Then the sexual experience, which is by nature like a feminine experience, even in men, doesn't matter. When she's penetrated it by consciousness, she's opening up, and that's what I mean by, you know, going in a different way. And then you can even go down to the base chakra, where issues of money and survival and fear of survival sits, and that's a whole different level of work. But what we're talking about and what we're working is having the descend as a spiritual path, or is it
more like an embodiment
Mm-hmm.
of consciousness rather than a transcending into consciousness. So more like, how do we bring consciousness into this body rather than how do we leave this body to get a taste of consciousness, right?
Exactly. And then and then you become a human being. You know, that's the fucking funny thing. As a human being, I mean, I'm always amazed. Like, we are humans. We have an asshole and we have the crown. That's how we're made. We have genitals and we have eyes and consciousness. That's how we're made by the divine. Why cut it into pieces and deny parts?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, what we are here to do is to claim it all.
Mm-hmm.
Can you be like really with, you know, open consciousness and know how to meditate, but also appreciate this animal and the animal body and the feelings and the emotions and the desires, and bring them all together? It's a path of integration.
Yeah. Oh, I love that word. And so do you think if you zoom back to your 20-year-old self who had these yearnings for spiritual, you know, for God, for divinity, for union, actually, and now you sit where you are now, do you think that this is the way of, that you feel fulfilled, that you could go back to that 20-year-old self and say, this is it, don't leave the self, come in? Has it brought that fulfillment?
Yeah, I many times actually remember specific points of confusion and send myself back in time to meet this young man and to call him to the path. And I don't think time is linear, actually. I actually, in some weird way, I can remember that in those times I had some kind of a feeling, which is maybe even the feeling of me today connecting with the past, you know.
Yeah.
Like back then, sitting there and feeling, no, there is a place, there is another way to go.
You can hear your future voice on the wind, like calling you.
Yeah.
And what about people who are in the religious path who might have stumbled across this podcast and are listening, and they're thinking, do I have to give this up? You know, like, I love my religion, but I want to embrace my sexuality. What would you say to them?
That in the depth of it, there is no contradiction.
Mm-hmm.
If you go beyond the dogma of religion, and if you understand also that, I mean, anyone who is in religion deep enough knows that there is a lot of politics behind it, and there is also a wish to control the people and make them good believers.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the best ways to control people is controlling their sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
I believe not only religions knew that, but also subconsciously, also empires and, you know, the states knows it. That's why every state today still have something to say about who you sleep with and who you have sex with and who you're not, which is completely weird in some ways. So those who want to be in their religion and embrace their religion, but to go in sacred sexuality path, I would say that most likely, if you just dive deep, if you're courageous enough to go to the core of both religion and sexuality, you'll find that they are connected and they love each other. And you can enrich your sexual experience through your religious revelations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can enrich your religion by actually bringing the truth that you feel in love, through love and pleasure, and enrich your actually religious realizations.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Wow. Thank you so much. Well, gosh, these are such great topics. We've already reached the end of our time, but it's really just wonderful to chat with you about all these things, because I know there are so many people out there who struggle, and how many religions give people a sense of shame and guilt around their sexuality. So it's just so beautiful to hear your story.
And that just reminds me, I recorded a whole internet course about Kabbalah and sacred sexuality, Kabbalah and love, which is not published yet. It will be published probably in the next weeks. So
great.
Yeah,
I'll put links to your website next to this so people can find more of you. And I just want to say again to everyone listening or watching that your book is so amazing. I recommend it to so many people. It's available on Amazon?
Amazon. It's called Kadesha, Kadasha.
So I'll put a link for that as well, because I found it absolutely, I could not put it down. It was one of those books that it was like a page turner. I read it, and then my lover started reading it at the same time, and we both had it on our Kindles, and we're like, it's fantastic. And I think it's actually one of the most powerful way to bring across all of these ideas, rather than just saying it's like this, bringing it through the story is...
And it's a historical story, which is unknown to most people. I made a mistake. It's not K-A, it's K-E.
I'll write it down in the links, don't worry. We'll make sure people can get it.
On Amazon, yeah.
Yeah, they're really fantastic. Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Shashi. Pleasure to talk with you.
Talk with you.